Hello, everyone. We are live with our webinar, and um, so welcome. Welcome. My name is Olena Gryniuk. I'm the founder and CEO at the Forward Digital, and this is the platform where we promote and develop the digitalization of receivable finance and build an active community of experts eager to drive change in receivable finance. And this is our next webinar within the Forward Digital project, and we speak about digital factoring. And today we will speak about the integration of invoice data in enhancing operational efficiency and access to SME finance, including factoring. And I'm very happy to have today as speakers Anurag Nigam, Chief Business Officer at Electronic Payments and Service, which is a leader payment technology service company based in Mumbai, India, and Katarinka Uzli, co-founder and business development director at Partner Hub, which is an e-invoicing provider for the banks, based in Budapest in Hungary. And today, Anurag and Katalin will share their key insights from their 2024 survey on invoice data utilization and reveal how leading Indian banks and financial institutions are adopting and utilizing invoice data. So, dear Anurag and Katalin, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Elena, for having us here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
thank you, Alana. Delighted to be here and doing the presentation. Yeah.
Yeah, we even just before we go to the topic, let me very shortly mention to our participants that the formats of today's webinar is a Q&A session, and we will be able to answer all your questions. So that's why we invite you to ask your questions. Please type them in the chat, and I will read them. And let's make this webinar interactive. And we are recording this webinar, so right after we finish, you will receive the link to the video and also webinar materials. Yeah, so let's go to our topic. The topic of e-invoicing and the usage of electronic invoice data is extremely important. And as we have today participants, I would say from all over the world, we have participants from India, from European countries, from Asia. Then just worth mentioning that the state of the e-invoicing implementation or mandatory e-invoicing schemes in Europe is that all European Union countries should implement it by the year of 2030. And we have countries which already implemented such schemes like Hungary, Serbia, Romania, and the main part of the European countries will be implementing it next 3 years. And also India implemented mandatory invoicing for business customers and have also several digital initiatives which promote development of digital technology across different regions, and also implemented trade receivable discount systems. So these are the platforms where SMEs can access quickly and finance or discount their trade receivables. And that's why I will start from my first question, Anurag, to you. Please tell us how such initiatives as e-invoicing and account aggregators and these trade receivable discount systems impact financial institutions in India.
Okay. Thank you for asking me, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to share with you as to what's happening, at least in India. Uh, so, I think what we need to understand right at the beginning is what is happening on the digitization side as far as the Indian market is concerned. Now, some of these initiatives are part of a much larger ecosystem that the government is has built predominantly themselves and along with certain private partnerships to ensure that the very large, whether it is the merchant base or the population base of our country, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, is able to leverage the infrastructure that has been built to ensure that we've got better financial inclusion. and ensure that the convenience associated with all of these processes are actually enjoyed by different segments. So two three initiatives is what I will talk about. You've already mentioned a little bit about account aggregator. You mentioned about the trade receivable discounting system. Mandatory e-invoicing actually is the beginning. The moment you do that, uh, these platforms, so I'll take for example account aggregator. Now account aggregator is a platform where a financial information provider and a financial information user uh, basically are married through a middleware which ensures that the financial information in a consent based manner is passed on from one to the other for either the merchant or the individual. Now what it does is convenience one part. It also takes care of the compliance requirements that are there, and compliance then, rather than becoming a headache of each individual, the system drives the compliance part. You've got convenience and coverage, because once you have this framework available, the coverage for various segments, whether it is the MSMEs or banks or individual, I think that increases, and they have a common platform for everybody to sort of transact and make the information flow. Uh, Also, the cost associated to collecting and different and disseminating information in a secured manner, I think that is something that is definitely a big edge. So on the account aggregator side, naturally, first I'm just defining that the flow becomes easier between the financial information user and the financial information provider for an intermediary, which is an MSME or a citizen or a corporate. If I come to the trade receivables discounting system, I think it's an excellent way to ensure that the liquidity and the credit for an MSME is taken care of. So, bill discounting through a common platform where you've got multiple buyers and multiple financiers. Naturally, the seller or as the MSME is also registered on that platform. It ensures that for an MSME, it's a quick generation of funds so that the throughput of their business increases, and the lenders have requisite buyers who are ready to ensure that the sort of the arbitrage between the two prices make the system self-sustaining. All of these, if I look at what it has done, I'll just throw open one slide. Can you take me back to the slide where we talk about MSME and what is the scope of MSME in this country?
Yes.
Yeah, because it will help us. Yeah. So if you look at this slide, and this would be a glaring problem not only for us, but it is for other countries as well. MSME constitutes a very large chunk of, of the country. Now, if I look at India, anywhere in excess of 200 million MSMEs are what are currently available in the country. In fact, the number is much higher. These guys contribute about 30% of the GDP. They are 45% of our exports, and very importantly, 45% of our workforce. What's happening to these guys is that there is a huge amount of credit gap that exists for these MSMEs. Now, this, while they contribute so much, look at the potential. If there is a 50-60% credit gap that exists today for the MSME, you need to have infrastructure and platforms in place which can help facilitate these credit gaps. And how do we make the financial institutions, how do we make it easier for the financial institutions to ensure that this credit gap can be addressed and they can lend to the MSMEs in a very secure manner with as less collateral, the need for collateral as needed. If I look at all of these platforms together, that is what these digital initiatives are ensuring. So The account aggregator, the trade receivables discounting system, along with e-invoicing and GST, they are ensuring that MSMEs become part of the mainstream. Lending is becoming easier, it is becoming more secure, and the processes are becoming far more lean and convenient.
Yeah. And Katsalin, if we look at the global scale, how invoice data can help actually in covering these financial gaps, SME financial in SME finance?
Yeah, so as I like to think, invoice data or using invoice data in finance is like, two birds, one stone, or actually a flock of birds, one stone. Because if you start using invoice data, it has, many uses, and it helps with all the relevant aspects that Anurag just mentioned. So you can or you should start using invoice data, because each invoice is an opportunity, for financing, and it must be paid at a point in time. So this is where we are coming from, that if you have access to invoice data in a structured and standardized way, then you can digitalize your processes or payments processes, financing processes. You can enhance your access to finance by having better risk models, by having better monitoring, by making sure that the invoices you finance are not fraudulent invoices. And so this is the use case. And then as a financial institution, you can decide how you want to access to the invoice data. You want to have it from third-party data sources such as invoices or GST, or you can also decide to provide an invoicing service or invoice-related service as a value-added offering for your MSME customers. So, the world is diverse. All kinds of approaches will happen, but this is how invoice data can help both financial institutions and MSMEs and even corporates to have a better efficiency for the financial supply chain. What we are seeing is that India is incredible in this respect, because of the digital initiatives. I think a lot of things happened in a very short time frame, and I think as we will see from the survey that we did, people and companies are already using invoice data. Of course, there are still bottlenecks, but I think they will be handled. And India will be a very good example for using invoice data as well in financing. In Hungary, which also introduced some kind of real-time data submission system for the tax authority. We have seen that the legislation started in 2018, and now it starts, certain use cases for embedded finance are starting to catch up. Payments are also starting to catch up with the introduction of real-time payments. So, I think these two countries are good test countries. And if you look at these countries, you will see what will happen, I think, all over the world.
Yeah, so it starts from the country level, right? When we can say the invoicing data is a game changer, and then probably we could go in some day to a global interoperability, right, and exchanging this data between the countries. Yeah,
exactly. So what is very important, that regulation is a very important driver in this. So you must ensure the data accessibility, and that can only be done by regulation, because otherwise, people don't start doing the standardization process. There are some examples. For example, in the Nordic countries, this has already happened. In the US, there is a bottom-up approach, not a top-down approach, but general approach will be driven by regulation.
Let's, I suggest to get to your survey and discuss here. Maybe let's start, what was the purpose and what are the key takeaways?
Yeah, so as a part of our cooperation with EPS, we did a survey because we were also interested in what happens on the Indian market in this respect, how people are using invoice data. So we made a survey. We asked 30 people with various backgrounds. You can see we asked banks, NBFCs, software providers, fintechs, with also a diverse target clientele with urban and rural customers. So we asked 32 people, and we had two separate topics. So we had a topic for using invoice data for cash-based lending, meaning financing, and also for AR and AP automation. So this was the topic. And about the background of the respondents, we saw that we reached those people who are rather advanced in digitalization. So when we look at the lending questionnaire, there 85% of the respondents, scored their digital maturity above 5 within a scale of 10. And for the payment survey, 75% of people told that their digital maturity is average or above average, I would say. So this is the survey, and we can get to the specifics into later as we proceed with the questions.
I would like to ask Anurag about the account aggregators, because Katalin also mentions that the examples from Hungary, and we know that in India this invoice data sharing goes through the account aggregators, right? So how does it work in practice? What's your experience so far with that?
See, it's interesting. India offers a very unique opportunity for, let me say, any sort of digitization service. And I'll come to the specific use cases that we have for account aggregator. We have a very large market base. I don't even have to, we are preaching to the choir when I tell people that, we've got a market base which has the capacity to absorb various kinds of solutions. The other thing is that our MSME base is also very, very large. So when we talk about exchange of information, you need a medium which is faster, convenient. Also, we've got very tight regulations. So from a regulation and a standardization perspective, I think a lot of work has already been done. You were also looking at, for the banks, we were looking at how to ensure that instead of physical collaterals, do you have can you have data as a collateral? So now here comes in the e-invoicing data. The first thing, the invoicing data gives you a real-time sort of view of the business. I'm also extending this. Account aggregator in isolation is just a pass-through service, right? It's a consent-based pass-through service. Till it makes sense for the financial information user or the lender in this case, till that time it actually does not make sense. So for them to model it out and ensure that they have this information about the business of a particular MSME or a corporate, it becomes very easy because they are fetching real-time invoicing information. So typically they have access to the APAR, how the cash flow is going to be. So a lot of banks are using the account aggregation for this particular use case. We've got a lot of filing and regulatory requirements. And many a times, these regulatory requirements are not met properly by the smaller merchants, so to say. Even the larger ones mess it up. It's a different story. But what happens is that when you are standardized and you're using an account aggregator framework, the corresponding, say, a CPA or a CA or a CA firm or advisory firm, which is ensuring that the compliance for this MSME or the mid-size organization has to be done on a quarterly basis, they are not dependent on the intermediary to provide that information, which in this case is the organization. Because they have the consent, they are able to complete all the compliance requirements in a very timely manner. We've seen segments, and you brought in a very valid slide, Olena. Look at where all this is being used. So personal loans actually have skyrocketed because the ease of information exchange because of account aggregator has increased. One area where it is still, while it has increased, but still there is huge potential, is where we are talking about unsecured business loans. We are seeing a growth, but this area is also ready to boom because many of these organizations are not able to provide collaterals, which your invoicing data through the account aggregator platform helps banks take a decision. Right? So credit worthiness, lendability, all of that is becoming far more convenient. So today, apart from banks, a lot of advisory firms, a lot of CAs, they are using this framework to ensure that the data from either the invoicing system or some of the other systems is pulled, and their ability to collect, correlate, compile, and present things in a comprehensive manner is being enhanced. I'm filing today, for example, I file my tax returns. I have to file my tax returns. Now, it could come from, I could be doing a side business, I could be working, I could be moonlighting. All of that data, when it is getting pulled, some of it is getting pulled from the invoicing that I would have done. Some of it is getting pulled from the other system, from my bank accounts, etc. And at the end of the day, if my filing has to happen in time, my CA is not even dependent on me at times to provide him every explanation. So it is cutting down the turnaround time. It is ensuring that the compliance is better, reducing frauds as well.
Yeah. And Katalin, is it the usual practice also on other markets that the access to the e-invoice data is done via the accounts aggregators? What are the best examples?
I think I just again can cherish India for the account aggregator scheme because at the moment I think this is the only one that shares invoice information in this respect. Obviously, in the EU, we have the PSD2, PSD3 initiatives, which are not, directed towards invoice data at the moment, but the concept is the same. And in Hungary and in some other countries, the tax authority also shares certain invoice data, but it is not a consent-based data sharing in the way that it is in India, because in India you can do it like in an organized way. In Hungary and I think Romania and Serbia, you can have access to your own invoice data, and then you can decide with whom you are sharing it with, but it doesn't happen on like a centralized platform or in a centralized way. So I think in this respect, India is unique. Yeah.
See, I think here the big difference is that the regulator has played a very big role. And if some of the other countries have to adopt, I think the central agency will have to be powerful, because while this was very good, there is also, if it is not controlled well, there is a potential for a lot of things that can go wrong as well. So that's where I think our regulator and the controlling bodies in India come into the picture, and that becomes very important, and that's probably the learning that is needed for some of the other countries who want to adopt.
Yeah, I agree. And also with the cost side, because if you have the scheme, then the integration cost is very less.
Yeah.
While if you have to, do the integrations always individually, that will increase the access to the data. And then the use cases, you can flush down the toilet. Yeah.
And the good part is, a lot of the, even your app, these are all open APIs, very easy to integrate with some of the disparate systems. And that typically is a challenge, but I think with the technology solutions that even, what you have, it's easy to integrate. And, that concern, if it addressed well, can increase the adoption phenomenally. So just wanted to interject and probably put my 2 cents here.
Yeah. Let's talk about challenges. Do you have any challenges with the access or the utilization of invoice data right now?
Any initiatives without challenges is, according to me, is
No such
useless.
way.
So yes, there is no such thing as no challenges. But I think the way we've looked at things is challenges have become sources of an opportunity. So most of the challenges that we found in this country have been converted into opportunities. See, standardization is an issue, right? So I think one of the things that is happening is that and standardization, one is what you do from a format, from a technology, so that the integration is easy. Uh, so that being a challenge, I think phenomenal amount of education and advocacy, and sometimes pushing it down the throat that you got to do it this way, has helped take care of that particular challenge. Open APIs, or banks ensuring that some of these are available for easy integration, has also addressed that particular challenge. Digital adoption, definitely a challenge yet, because a lot of these the smaller merchants or the MSMEs have a certain fear that if my data is being exchanged in this manner, just on a basis of a consent, I'm not too sure how it's going to be utilized. So it's more of, while the adoption is a challenge, more and more education and ensuring that the risks associated to that is minimal, is helping take care of that challenge. Data privacy, data security continues to be an area of concern, but again, India has a DPDT policy, and that is a uh, very strongly defined policy, which ensures that if there is any lapse uh, on either sides, there are very heavy penalties and consequences, which means that people will be a lot more sensitive to data privacy and data security. And last but not the least, the traditional lenders who tend to, number one, fleece some of these guys, will find it difficult. So they create their own roadblocks in terms of the adoption of such initiatives. But net, as we look at our entire telecom and our entire communication infrastructures being so strong, and the physical the e-verification of a lot of today, our entire KYC, for example, is through something similar to an SSN. We call it the Aadhaar based authentication. So many of these initiatives are ensuring that the resistance and the security challenges are being addressed, and adoption will only increase. Our base is so high that even if 10% or 15% of my base adopts, it will be a scale probably equivalent to what the entire Europe is going to do. I'm just exaggerating a little bit, but that's the reality of the situation.
Okay. Yeah. And according to the survey that you did, Katalin, is it the same thing in other countries? And maybe do you know what are the strategies how to overcome these challenges?
Yeah, so what survey respondents say is that with respect to the limitations, that in the account aggregator framework, the GST based MSME lending is not yet live. So that is something, when it will happen, then it will definitely increase the utilization of the framework and the data accessibility, and then this limitation will cease. The other things that people mentioned is that so for smaller companies, some companies are not, or not some companies, a lot of companies are not yet obliged to issue invoices. So it's very difficult to get access to data for those companies. So that is definitely a challenge. They also mentioned that cash-based economy is still there in India, is still present in India. So it's again a data accessibility issue, and also related to the fact that some industries and sectors are still GST exempt. So again, there is a lack of data that you need to handle. But I think, as Anurag also told, that even if there is 20% penetration, 30% penetration, it's like a huge improvement compared to what is going on today.
And this is from what I understand, that e-invoicing is obligatory for bigger SMEs, right? So smaller SMEs,
bigger like 50 million rupees. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah, 50 million rupees, and then it's around 550,000 euros. So it's in Indian terms, I think they are sizable SMEs. So the bigger ones, and then we need to find out. I think the thresholds will go down with time, but I think the financial community also needs to work on how to make people start using invoicing, even if it's not mandatory for them. Just how you can get to access to other transactional data that they might generate in other ways. So this is something that can help with the data-based lending and using data as a collateral.
What are the most requested services, Katalin, based on your experience from the customers when they are requesting invoice data? So are banks or financial companies using it for underwriting, for credit decision, or for the risk management? What's the most common use case?
Let me just show you a couple of slides. So for lending, what people mentioned, or what we specifically asked, if they want to use invoice data for certain purposes. So credit risk assessment is definitely the winner. There was the second one is checking invoice authenticity, and the third one was lending workflow digitalization. So these were the use cases that we specifically asked, but people mentioned other things as well. So for analyzing sales, analyzing financials in a deeper way than just to have the profit and loss account. Also, it was important to understand payment cycles and payment patterns. They also mentioned buyer risk assessment. They also mentioned to build up a data repository for later analysis. So these were the most important things that they also mentioned. And there was a big chunk, not only for let me just find the right. So not only for for other purposes, but specifically for data analytics as well. Let me just find that slide. I'm not sure I will. Anyway, so data analytics was a big chunk. And for the payments questionnaire, people mentioned that they would like to analyze key relationship of the customers, concentration of the customers, related party transactions, again, payment behaviors, invoice compliance. So if the invoice is real. And they also mentioned that it is very important not only to have only invoice data, but look at invoice data, GSTR data, and bank transaction data together to have like a comprehensive data pool on which you can do your analysis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Anurag, having all this data, how financial institutions are designing or should design different solutions for MSMEs and for corporates?
See, for MSMEs, the bottom line is that the banks have to focus on simplified solutions. As simple as that. You make it complicated, the MSME offtake will not happen. I'll just give you one more example. What we've done, we've created a platform for the MSMEs. Now, we need to also understand what are the gaps that the MSME has today. They don't have probably proper systems to run their business. So we created a platform which is democratizing the business process for a MSME. They will get everything in a platform which helps them take care of their all their business process, accounts payable, accounts receivable, inventory management, HR, payroll, everything under the sun, right? Now, incidentally, e-invoicing is also one part of it. And when you make this available, say, to an MSME, then, and if this product is available along with the banking product, which is the typical banking services, you ensure that the MSME is sort of stuck to the bank and becomes valuable for the bank. So banks have to look at solutions and services which are simple. MSME can quickly come on board. uh, Look at low cost financing for them. Look at least collateral or low collateral financing. Look at uh, data as a collateral rather than asking them for multiple details. And banks are also leveraging the GST data and e-invoicing data basically to offer working capital loans. So this is what they should do for the MSMEs. For larger corporates, I guess supply chain financing is something that can be looked at. Dynamic discounting, like unlike an MSME where you would have a sort of a cookie cutter number based on the buyer seller, here with a larger corporate, you've got to look at dynamic discounting. And then the for larger, you need to have some sort of a customer risk management tool, so that they can look at, this is a larger corporate, maybe in multiple businesses, working in multiple geographies. How do we evaluate risks for this differently from a smaller MSME, which is sort of localized in a particular area? So that's where I would see the differentiation, and eventually it will boil down to, for an MSME, as less customization needed, simple, and let that automation be something which they can adopt very easily. For larger corporations, naturally you'll have to customize things to your requirements along with the applications or the software that you offer to them for such services.
Yeah.
Does it address what you were asking?
Of course, yeah, and yeah, this goes beyond actually financing services to SMEs, and this is about building ecosystems.
I want to give you one very small example of what we are doing for a particular bank at the moment. So we've offered them this platform for their MSME customers. Now, incidentally, in e-invoicing, the accounts payable, accounts receivable, their expense management, all that is, those modules are available for the MSME. Now, from the invoice data that we are getting and from the payable data that we see in terms of their transaction, we are identifying, we are recommending to the bank through the analytical engine to say which MSME is less risky, which MSME is more risky. Example, if a certain MSME has a concentration on only one customer or only one supplier, vis-a-vis three other MSMEs who are a little more balanced, we recommend that, look, both of these guys have a gap of, say, 15 days every month, every second month, for their working capital needs, looking at how their payable and receivable cycle are. And that data is coming out from the invoicing data and the receivables data. Then you tell the bank that, look, you don't need to do anything else. Look at this collateral. And every second month for 15 days, you can offer an unsecured loan to this guy at a rate which should be reasonable because this is what his business can absorb. So equipping the banks, and this is a very powerful use of the invoicing data as well. The only thing is we are marrying 2 3 other systems also to it. But this is helping both the MSME as well as the bank. In an earlier situation, this would be a totally neglected situation. The MSME would have been neglected, and he or she would have gone to a third party lender, probably spend a lot more money, and not and also they would not have been very compliant. So it's bringing in a change, and this is a very powerful, for example, use case for us as we are working with one of the South India based banks in terms of testing this solution out. Just wanted to share this as a use case here.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. And usage of the e-invoicing data beyond the lending or financing services to SMEs. Katalin, would you like to add here some words, figures? Yeah.
Yes, just to reflect with the survey results. So what people said that tracking payments and tracking payment patterns, doing reminders is something that people would love to provide as a service. Definitely, invoice and payment data reconciliation is something that is a huge topic these days. So that is, I think, a problem for all companies, and then financial institutions are trying to address this problem for their customers. So there is all the integration points, like with payments, you can generate a collect request or a UPI collect request if you have the invoice data, embedded financing. So these are the things where these value-added services come into place, and where financial institutions need to look what is beyond the traditional scope of financial services, and how they can enhance their operations using invoice data. We also asked about if people provide, or if banks provide APIs for integrations. I think this is something that it needs to be addressed if we are talking about especially larger customers, because they would have the need to integrate with their systems with the bank system or financial institution system. And the respondent says, so 50% of the respondents said that they already provide APIs for AP and AR automation, and I think this is already a good number. We also see that in Hungary, banks started to provide these APIs, and the customers just love it. So it's early days, but people just need these integration points. So this is something that will be a focus point in the near future.
Yeah, I agree with you. And yeah, let's talk a little bit about the future. We have a question which I will read from Zilhas Ran about the future. So what are the growth areas of markets would a bank should tap on for invoice finance for this year, and maybe for the next one as well? Anurag, what are your thoughts on that?
I think so if I hear the question right, is it to do with how do we increase the lending, or what is it that we are talking about?
Yeah. So what are the growth areas of invoice finance?
So from a growth area standpoint, I think expanding the account aggregator adoption definitely is one, because without them, that you will struggle from a scale standpoint. Building in a lot of analytics so that the collateral free or the data as a collateral approach really sees the light of the day. We are already seeing signs of for that, and it's a change from traditional banking. I think if that happens, there will be a lot more offtake, and the growth increases. Again, integrating multiple platforms like the one that we talked about, the MSME platform, where you are, apart from you are helping them grow their business. If they grow their business in terms of ensuring that his basic business processes are digitized and that is offered to them at a fraction of the cost, I think they return through the consumption of some of these services multifold to the institution. So as soon developing these platforms to a much larger scale to be available for MSMEs. You've seen the credit offtake of MSMEs today. We were looking at some data from an India standpoint. The MSME credit is just about 1% of the total credit that the banks are. See, there are varying data. Somebody says it's about 6%. Somebody says it's 0.5%. But I think the sweet spot lies somewhere in 1.5%. And 1.5% to somebody who's contributing 40% of your GDP is, you just have to make life convenient for them, and all of a sudden you see growth, which probably some of us will not be even able to handle. That's the potential that at least I see. And last but not the least, I think collaboration with a lot more fintechs and basically the NBFCs, as we call them. I think that will also be the key to growth.
Yeah. And Katalin, based on the survey, what are the priorities or key priorities in that area for the financial institutions? The future, yeah.
Yeah, let me just switch back. So what people mentioned is that they were already looking beyond invoice data and looking beyond invoice data integration for the future. So people mentioned digitalizing other documents than invoices and payments. So, for example, shipping documents were mentioned. As for India, they mentioned that the importance of local language systems are very important for, especially if we are talking about digital maturity, if we are talking about education and including MSMEs, then this is something that needs to happen. They mentioned integration with buyer systems. I mean also here any other system, so ecosystem building for SMEs and enabling the corporate ecosystems as well. That will be very important. And people were just generally very positive about the effect of invoice data, how it can leverage lending and payments processes. So it was what you could see from the survey results, that there is already recognizing the importance data, but all the results pointed to the tendency that it will be much more important in the future. There was one interesting comment that it's good to have the data in place, but the government could provide some additional guarantees, for financial service providers, so that they will be actually motivated to provide cash flow based lending. So these are the things that are worth mentioning.
Yeah. And which regulations do you consider actually can boost? Because several times we mentioned here that the regulations are the key boosters for e-invoicing and for the usage of the invoicing data. What do you think should be done the nearest years to boost it or to maximize the effect, let's say?
I think India is on a good track. So, just keep on what you are doing. I don't know if you agree, Anurag. So,
Absolutely. See, in our case, the regulator is very nimble in terms of they keep inviting a lot of comments and feedback from the industry. And they've been fairly, see, they have tight controls, but they've been very receptive to when we face a challenge. I'll give you, this is a slightly unrelated example, but I'll give you that example. And this is what the regulator brought the change. Uh, when we were submitting our quotes for very large banks, typically the government contracts, we had to actually submit bank guarantees, okay, in lieu of a performance guarantee or something like that. Now, when you submit that, you block a very large amount of funds, right? Depending upon what the bank guarantee comes at. So, with a lot of dialogue with the regulator, one of the things that they changed was that, look, instead of a bank guarantee, can you have a insurance product? Can you have an insurance company which builds in a product to say that, you know what, if somebody defaults, this is like an insurance product, I will pay you this amount, but instead of blocking my funds, I pay something like a term insurance, or how we take our health or term insurance, and it's called a surety bond. Now, all of a sudden, it has the potential to release very large amount of funds, typically for infrastructure, where you have infrastructure investments. And the vendors who were providing these, say, bank guarantees, they were changed to surety bonds. And surety bond is an insurance product. It comes at a fraction of a cost of a bank guarantee, and you don't block your funds. So, one short, cost has been addressed, and also the liquidity has been addressed as well. So, just one small example as to how the regulator has been fairly nimble. And our regulator is just not that regulator. It's a combination of, we've got a Department of Financial Services, there's a Department of Payment Systems, and some of them report to the RBI, some of them report to the ministry. But typically they work in fairly good cohesion.
Yeah.
One thing, just you had asked, Kathleen, the previous question in terms of what all needs to be added to the sort of the invoicing system. One of the things that when we were talking to a customer of ours, probably it's there, but they were looking at something a little more of a document management system. I think Kathleen pointed towards it, that can we have other documents which are needed for shipping, etc. to be in. So they were looking at, can this also house an entire document management system which also takes care of my contracting needs? So all my contracts, so a contract repository, and this data being pulled from contracts to getting into the invoicing, so that the error is minimized.
So just integrate the whole order to cash or purchase to pay cycles for the small companies as well. Yeah, so that is something that we are also seeing as a need for MSMEs.
All right. Yeah, and to wrap up today's session, Anurag, what are your tips? What is your advice for the banks and financial institutions that want to start usage leveraging the invoice data effectively?
It's a difficult question. Yeah. It's a difficult question to answer, but I guess the banks have to first to look at their own systems a little bit as well, as to how quickly. See, this is all about timing as well. So how quickly and how easily you can create an environment of integration for such systems. Number two, I think internal adoption. So while we use big words that they should trust the system and all that, but the proof of the pudding is that they would have to educate and demonstrate. And some of the players like us, whether it is EBS or its partner hub, and many others as well, but we have to play a role to build that trust in terms of demonstrating and showcasing that how this works. And you know what, Mr. Bank, your stakeholders, they will be covered. You will be less susceptible to frauds. Your duplication, or if you're making duplicate payments today, my system has the capability to to check and detect. I think some part of that will have to be done, and that's what the banks will have to be a little more open. And if people like us highlight that your challenges for compliance can be taken care of, that's another area. Last but not the least, we have to show the business potential in terms of how much more and how much easier lending, which lesser NPAs can this help them achieve. So those business cases, rather than the bank working on it, we as the partner ecosystem will have to help the bank with. That's what I think, at least, at this stage.
Thank you very much, Mark. Yeah, thank you. And Katalin, what's your advice for the banks who would like to start accelerating the use of the invoice data?
Yeah, I think strategic understanding of the use cases and how you can use invoice data and how you can make money on invoice data. So something that needs to be addressed from my perspective. We have the experience that, even if the technology implementation is done, the banks are still, do not have the profound idea and convincing themselves that that this is going to work. So I would rather go beyond the technology and to just to see that, guys, you need to believe in this and this is going to work. And I think we should also show them how it could actually work and how you can make money on using the invoice data. So I see a challenge there, at least from our own experience.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
we've seen that some of these banks only realize when things fail or break down, and that's where I think the education comes into picture, where we say that, look, don't wait for a breakdown to happen. Utilize this, and like Kathleen rightly pointed out, they need to probably know better in terms of what would be the business case and what is the business benefit for them. Technology will just be an enabler, but if they see that value, I think the adoption becomes relatively simple. And there is phenomenal value. Just the scale itself, if you look at India, just the scale itself takes care of some of these the benefits that we bring to the table. Their lending going up by 1%, or the number of customers going up by 1% is itself the targets will be achieved.
Yeah, totally. Well, thank you very much, Anurag, Katalin, for this insightful webinar. Thank you very much for your contribution, for sharing your source experience on this very important topic. Thank you very much to our attendees for being with us, for staying till the very end. Here, so we will share the presentation, we will share the video recording, and of course, we will share the contacts to Anurag and Katalin, and they will be happy to consult you in person how to use effectively invoice data and in your operations and lending. So thank you very much, and see you next time at our next webinar next month. So thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you on behalf of EPS as well. Thanks.
Thank you.